And now for a super fun topic, captain skills. Now, this topic is quite subjective, and there is no true right or wrong way to do it. Well, actually, I lie. If you don't have air supremacy, you're doing the wrong thing. But anyway, we're going to talk you through the captain skills that you can take for a CV captain and kind of outline why each one is good, why each one is bad, and kind of give you an idea of some different captain builds you can try. This is, of course, all of my opinion. There are going to be people who disagree with me, and that's fine. But this is going to give you the basic outlines to start thinking about how you can spec your CV. Let's start with our Tier 1 skills. Tier 1 is pretty simple. You have two skills, Aircraft Servicing Expert and Dogfighting Expert. Aircraft Servicing Experts increases the health of your planes, as well as reducing the amount of time they take to service. Dogfighting Expert increases the damage per tier difference between fighter planes. Therefore, if your fighter plane is a Tier 7 going up against a Tier 8, you'll get an extra 10% to the damage. It also increases fighter ammunition by 10%. Aircraft Servicing Expert is the staple for all CVs and will want to be included in every CV build. This is the perfect place to start. Dogfighting Expert is a little bit more varied. It's best used on Tiers 5, 6, and 7, as they can see CVs of higher tiers. Other ships it is useful on is ships that have under-tiered fighters, such as the American Midway, the Gaff Zeppelin, or the Enterprise. Although Dogfighting Expert makes most sense on the previously listed ships, it is generally taken in most builds, as most builds leave 1 point left, and this is the only skill that makes sense, as it does provide the extra 10% ammo to fighters. Next we have our Tier 2 skills. There are three main Tier 2 skills you can choose between. You have a Torpedo Accelerations, which increases the speed of your torpedoes at the expense of their range. Adrenaline Rush, which increases the rate of which your planes reload when you take damage. And you have Expert Rear Gunner, which increases the damage of the rear gunner by 10%. Torpedo Acceleration can be taken on any CV that has the torpedo armament. It should be noted, in my opinion, it is very playstyle dependent. If you're not very good at hitting destroyers, then Torpedo Acceleration can help by making the torpedoes move faster. It should be noted that with Torpedo Acceleration, there is a longer activation time on the torpedoes, which generally means you have to drop the torpedoes further out. The alternative Tier 2 skill that can be taken is Adrenaline Rush. Now, Adrenaline Rush works on the premise of your planes taking off faster if you get damaged. If you're not the sort of person to push your CV forward and put yourself in positions where you can potentially take damage, it's probably not the skill for you, and in which case I would say stick with the Torpedo Acceleration. The last skill, Expert Rear Gunner, is not one I would recommend. Expert Rear Gunner only adds 10% DPS to the rear gunner of your strike force, that is your torpedo and your dive bombers. With most of these planes only having a DPS of around somewhere between 18 and 22, this 10% just really doesn't add up. I believe the other skills of Torpedo Acceleration or Adrenaline Rush are just much better options than this skill. Halfway through, there are 4 possible Tier 3 skills that can be used on a CV. Torpedo Armament Expert. The main point of this skill is it reduces the reload time of the torpedo bombers. Basic Firing Training. This increases the DPS of the AA defense. It also does add a little bit to your secondaries, although that's not the primary reason we would take this skill. Emergency Takeoff allows planes to take off of a CV when it is on fire, however they take twice as long to take off. And lastly, Demolition Expert, which gives a 2% chance increase of setting a target on fire with dive bombers. The first must-have skill for any CV that has torpedoes is going to be Torpedo Armament Expert. The 20% off the reload speed for torpedo bombers really does add up during the duration of the game. Given the torpedo bombers are your main damage dealers, it's paramount to have these skills going up as quick as possible. Basic Fire Training is going to be my secondary recommendation. This is going to be the skill that you take if you're running a CV that doesn't have torpedoes, such as the Gaff Zeppelin. This skill obviously increases your anti-air ability, which is great for fending off strikes from the enemy's CV. This is also a skill I commonly take during competitive seasons. Emergency Takeoff is not one of the skills I would recommend. With it, while yes you can take off planes while on fire, you're only ever going to be able to get 1 if not 2 squads up before the fire runs out. In comparison to the other skills available, it's just not one I see as being useful or practical in comparison to the other skills. Lastly, Demolition Expert. Demolition Expert is one of those ones you can take, however, its impact is so minimal, 2% isn't that much, that in my opinion, it's just not worth taking. There are other skills that just give you so much more benefit than what Demolition Expert can offer you. Phew! We're almost there, guys. On to our Tier 4 skills. Tier 4, there's actually 5 different skills you can take depending on the CV that you are trying to spec. Air Supremacy is a must. There's no getting around it. I shouldn't need to explain why. Concealment Expert reduces the detectability of the CV. Advanced Fire Training increases the anti-air defense firing range, giving you more AA power over distance. Then we have Manual Fire Control for anti-air, which significantly improves the efficiency of large caliber AA guns when manually selected. Then we also have Manual Control Fire for secondaries, which is pretty much the same thing, but for secondaries instead of anti-air. Again, I'm not going to explain why you need to take Air Supremacy, but it should be the first skill you take on any CV. Concealment Expert is a little bit half and half. It's great on American CVs, but not as critical on Japanese. The last 3 skills, Advanced Fire Training, Manual Fire Control for anti-air, and Manual Fire Control for secondaries, are all optional. They do have certain ships that they work better on, and certain ships they don't work well for at all. It all comes down to the ship. Now you have the basic knowledge of the skills that make up various skill builds for CVs. Stay tuned for next video where we will actually start looking at some builds you can take on your various CVs. Until then!